he'd told them that this would be their last mission. But Yunho looks at Ji-yeon and Choi, who were overjoyed, and thinks to himself that it's impossible for this to be true, that the next mission will be the last one. He then opens his properties window and says that the system mentioned there was a next stage, and even if this mission was the last one, it would be impossible for them to offer rewards or skills. Ji-yeon calls out to Yunho, telling him that they need to go to the stairs now and wait for the mission to begin. Choi, with great enthusiasm, says that since this will be the final mission, he will give it his all. Before Yunho walks with them, he finds a pair of scissors and says he should take it with him because people in this mission will be more aggressive than before, and he needs to be ready for anything that might happen. The scene then shifts to them arriving at the floor where the safe zone is located. But as soon as they enter through the door, Ji-yeon and Choi look shocked, unable to believe what they're seeing is real. But Yunho says it's real, and that he expected it to happen, adding that this restructuring is no longer just a game. It's more brutal than any other game, like a completely real PvP scene. Seeing how difficult the situation was, Choi asks Yunho what they should do now, saying it's impossible to force their way into the safe zone given its current state. Yunho considers Choi's words, admitting that it's indeed impossible to enter by force, and that they need to be careful since they don't know what rewards the people fighting inside might have. One of them might have something dangerous. An idea occurs to him as he thinks of an alternative solution to get into the safe zone. He then calls out to Ji-yeon and Choi, pointing to a place behind the people, and tells them they will head there now and that they don't have much time, so they need to move quickly. When they arrive, Yunho grabs a ladder and tells them that he will climb it and stand above the display screen. Choi asks him what he plans to do once he's up. Yunho replies very seriously that he's going to drop the screen on the people, and if it falls forward, it will land exactly in the safe zone. The people inside will be hit, but they won't die. Ji-yeon and Choi are astonished by his thinking, and Ji-yeon says that by doing this, they will also be able to avoid a fight. Yunho replies that she's correct, although it goes against what the system wants. Then Choi tells Yunho that he's amazing as usual, but he asks him how he knew there was a ladder in this place. Yunho responds that it's just experience, and that in the old company where he used to work, there was also a display space, and they had a ladder in this place. Once they enter, Choi says that the place looks very chaotic from the inside. Yunho then points to Choi the part he's supposed to push, and tells them that as soon as the screen falls, they need to enter the safe zone quickly before time runs out. Choi takes a deep breath and pushes the screen with all his strength. The people who were fighting below look up as darkness suddenly engulfs them, wanting to know what caused it. People rush out of the safe zone quickly, fearing that the screen might fall on them. As soon as they stabilized on the ground, Yunho told them to run quickly and stand in the middle of the safe zone as fast as possible before the others could reclaim their positions. Yunho said, as he was entering the safe zone, that they timed it well and that there was no need to overdo the worrying, but to be ready for any unexpected changes. Something unexpected indeed happened. Director Park grabbed Ji-yeon by her hand and asked her what kind of foolishness she had just done. He continued yelling at her, saying that her job as a secretary was to serve him, and how dare she save herself only. He asked if she was the one who dropped the screen on them, and said that because of her, his leg was injured, and he couldn't enter the safe zone. He gave her an ultimatum, either take him with her, or they both die together. Ji-yeon pushed his hand, and Director Park fell. She was still running quickly to get to the center of the safe zone as Yunho had instructed, but Director Park grabbed her by her hair. He told her she wasn't going anywhere, and asked how she could abandon the person she was supposed to serve. But Yunho appeared and cut Ji-yeon's hair. He said it was good that he had brought the scissors with him, and we flash back to when Yunho was in the office looking for a weapon to use. He found those scissors as well as a small knife. He said that the knife was too thin and had limited use, and the scissors weren't intimidating unless opened, so he had to make something out of both. Returning to the present moment after Yunho cut Ji-yeon's hair, he kicked Director Park, pushing him back hard. He then left him and entered the safe zone, just as time ran out, leaving Park outside. Park's body started disintegrating, and he cursed them before his body completely vanished. Choi screamed as soon as he saw what had happened, to the point where Ji-yeon was startled by his voice. He apologized to her, not knowing what to say about her cut hair. The same went for Yunho, who was extremely nervous, saying that he had cut a girl's hair without even asking for her permission, and though it had to be done, it still felt strange. He was terrified when he saw Ji-yeon approaching him, wondering if she was upset about what he had just done to her hair. When Ji-yeon reached him, he didn't know whether to apologize or what to do. He was shocked when he saw that Ji-yeon wasn't angry. Instead, she asked him to cut her hair even shorter so that such a situation wouldn't happen again. He asked if she was sure about what she was saying now, unable to believe that she was laughing, and wondered how strong her mental fortitude must have grown to be in this state. He added that the scissors weren't in the best condition now, so he wouldn't be able to cut her hair at the moment. She asked about what had happened to the scissors, but Choi told her not to worry, and that he would find another pair for her. He moved leisurely, so Yunho told him that there were still people stuck underneath them now. Then they received another notification that the mission was over, and that the number of survivors was 16. Choi thanked them for helping him, but Yunho told him that he had done most of the work this time. Yunho was then shocked when he heard from the system that they had completed the tutorial stage, that rewards would now be distributed, and that the synchronization rate would increase slightly. Everyone present was visibly tense, saying that the system had clearly stated that this was supposed to be the last mission, and they were clueless about what was happening and who was responsible for this. But Yunho was the only one who had anticipated something like this would happen. Then they saw a girl coming out of the wall in front of them, and they heard the system's voice telling them that the projects had been activated by the administrator's authority, and the project's name was The Selection. When the girl emerged from the void, she found that the number of mission survivors was 16 people, and she seemed annoyed because that number was large. Choi said that this girl was still a child, probably no more than 11 years old, and Ji Yan was surprised that she was floating in the air. But Yunho replied that their perception of age was meaningless here, and even without introductions or any explanation, it was very clear that this girl was the one in charge of the system and everything that had happened. The girl noticed that someone had dropped a screen to save the largest number of people, but someone interrupted her, asking about her identity and how she suddenly appeared from the void. She descended toward him and said her name was Haruna, then asked him who came up with the idea of the screen, adding that it was a very clever idea. Yunho was surprised and nervous as well because Haruna had reached that man very quickly, and he wondered if it was a skill that could be acquired from the rewards. Then Choi told Yunho that it seemed Haruna was looking for him, to which Yunho replied that they would wait and not speak until they saw what happened, and Choi told him that the atmosphere was full of optimism now. At that moment, they all heard a woman called Madame Yu respond to Haruna's question, saying that she was the one who came up with the screen idea. Another woman screamed at Madame Yu for intervening, even though she didn't know the real reason Haruna was looking for the person behind the idea. The security guard beside her added that Madame Yu always acted this way. Then Madame Yu replied hesitantly, saying she thought she might benefit if she said anything, but the other woman continued berating her because she wanted to take credit for something she didn't do. When Haruna heard them, she quickly approached them and asked Madame Yu with a very angry expression if she was really the one behind the idea. Madame Yu was very scared and told her that she was not actually the one behind the idea. Haruna got even angrier and asked why she had spoken if she wasn't the one. Yunho thought to himself, still anxious, that almost everyone felt the same. There was a coldness in every word that came from the girl, fear that arose from the frozen atmosphere she created, and the majesty that radiated from that small body. Back to Haruna, who grew bored of Madame Yu's attempts to justify her actions, and told her to shut up. Then, she brought her finger close to Madame Yu, who was confused and didn't understand anything. Suddenly, they found that Haruna had exploded Madame Yu's head with just her finger. Haruna then said very coldly, as if she hadn't just killed someone, that the first thing she had to do now was to evaluate them, and that she had just erased someone, leaving 15 people remaining. Yunho felt worried when he heard her words, especially since she said that someone she had just killed had been erased, as if people's lives were trivial to her. Haruna continued, saying that the company's general policy required that every individual be met individually, but she was too busy to do that, so she would ask them all at once, and they should think carefully before answering. When Yunho heard her say that the company wanted to evaluate each of them, he wondered what exactly she wanted to evaluate. Then Haruna began asking if there were any athletes who would raise their hands, but no one responded. Then she asked if there were any celebrities, whether singers, actors, or anything else, but there was no response either. Afterward, Ji Yan and Choi were asked why they were looking for this type of person in a corporate complex. Choi responded, saying that after what they had just seen, who would dare speak or even raise their hand? Haruna then continued her questions, asking if there was anyone with a global impact, like an artist who had created an amazing work or something exceptional. At that moment, someone raised their hand and hesitantly asked if a YouTuber could be considered as such. Haruna then asked him sarcastically, also irritated, what he meant by that. The boy then retracted his words, asking her to forget what he had just said. Haruna responded with a clear threat that if he said something foolish like that again, he would have no one to blame but himself for what would happen to him. Haruna then continued, saying she expected not to find anyone here, and added that she would finish this matter quickly. She said she would distribute all the introduction stage rewards at once, and that during the introduction stage, the rewards were supposed to be distributed individually based on each person's characteristics. However, that would have been exhausting, so she decided to distribute them all at once and randomly. She then said that it seemed they didn't have any questions, and disappeared again as suddenly as she had appeared. Ji Yan commented on what had happened, saying that Haruna didn't even give them time to think before disappearing. After that, they received a new notification that the new mission had now begun, and it was called The Arena. Everyone was puzzled because there were no details about the mission, no specific time, or a safe area to go to, leaving them confused and not knowing what to do. Yunho said that as he expected, the mission had changed from the beginning of this stage, and they had to be as prepared as possible. He added that if the game would revolve around speed and violence as it did previously, then the best thing they could obtain was flexibility. But now there was a new variable called the arena, and in such cases, when there was no way to predict the upcoming tasks, they needed to be prepared for all possibilities. Yunho then opened the properties window and said that choosing a safe reward with no risk was the best option in the current situation. Yunho was surprised by the new notification that appeared, saying that the reward had changed after finishing the tutorial stage, and that the reward level had increased, along with an important bonus point and a random box for new themes. Yunho was even more surprised when a real box appeared in front of him, and he noticed that when he brought his hand close to the box, it shook violently. He said that it seemed as if the box could explode at any moment, and he wondered to himself if this was a trap. But he heard a sound afterward, and when he looked, he found two people had opened their box. The box contained a lot of money. The girl started counting the money and told the boy that it was a lot. The boy, still shocked, replied that the money might reach 500 million won, and the girl asked him to quickly open his reward and see what he would get from the box. But Yunho had a completely different perspective, saying that this reward was worthless, because if the restructuring was happening everywhere on Earth, it meant that the civilization they knew had ended, and it would be very clear that this money would become just worthless paper. If the reward were a loaf of bread, it would have much more value than this money. Yunho said, as he prepared to open his box, that they needed things that would help them in the increasingly difficult tasks and the upcoming competition, and his priority was to get armor first, and then weapons. He then remembered Haruna, who was capable of cutting Madame Yu into pieces with just one finger. He said he didn't know if he would meet people like Haruna in the future or not, and that he had used his 3 rewards to heal his injured foot, and now he needed a strong reward to make up for the gap between him and others. When he placed his hand on the box, he wished for something good to come out. As for the others, they received swords and shields, but they weren't able to use them well. Choi got a full set of armor, and he was very happy with it. He approached Yunho to show him the armor, but Choi and Ji Yan were surprised when they saw Yunho's reward, which was just a small stone. Yunho said that he couldn't do anything with that stone, and that things had gotten extremely out of hand. Choi and Ji Yan tried to cheer Yunho up a little, telling him that this stone might be very rare or have unique properties. Then Ji Yan got a dagger from the reward box, and Yunho told her that it seemed she liked the dagger. She replied that she felt very comfortable holding it in her hand. She added that it was the first time she held a knife other than kitchen knives, and Yunho responded, saying that this dagger was good and would be useful in many situations. Ji-yeon replied, saying she would now use it to adjust her hair since she had the opportunity, and Yunho was shocked by her statement, wondering how much her mental fortitude had grown to be able to do that. He said that things were still in their favor, as Ji-yeon and Choi got good items, and the only problem was with his reward. He didn't know how to use the stone and said it was pathetic, and that even if he threw it at someone, it wouldn't have much of an effect. After that, he tried placing his hand on the stone, wondering if it was really an ordinary stone, but when he touched the stone with his finger, it began to dissolve into him. When his body absorbed the stone, he received a notification from the system telling him that he was now absorbing diamond from abandoned mountains. Yunho felt fear from the sensation, saying it was as if his hand was turning to stone from the inside. When his body finished absorbing the stone, he received a notification that he had acquired a new skill called Petrified Skin. Yunho discovered that he could acquire a new skill after getting a notification that the hardening skill had been activated for him. The system informed him that the amount he absorbed was small, so the activation was initially limited. But he had acquired this skill as a reward, and this skill was completely different from what he had obtained before, as it gave him new abilities, such as hardening that could significantly enhance his defenses. However, he felt disappointed when he realized that its use was currently limited to just one finger. Yunho then wondered how strong this skill could be, given that the system was stingy in granting it to him, and he sat down on the ground. Choi was puzzled by what he was doing, and Ji-yeon asked if anything had happened. They were both shocked when they saw what Yunho had just done. He broke the ground with his finger, which now looked like stone. Ji-yeon asked if this was a new skill of his, and he replied that it was indeed a skill he had just acquired from the stone. He said that this skill could be useful in terms of offensive power and durability, but he started wondering how beneficial it would be while using just one finger. But then a new idea came to him, and he opened the properties window to see if he could improve the skills using the points he had just gained. It turned out that he could, but before the skill could be improved, the system asked him to choose the part where he wanted to add the skill. Yunho said he would use it on his thumb, so now he had 2 fingers that could use the hardening skill. They were then distracted by the voices of the 2 people who had won the money, arguing excessively. The girl wanted to buy a new house for newlyweds, but the boy told her that he wasn't thinking about marriage at all right now. The girl responded by saying that he had tried to take her money in the beginning, and now he was saying he didn't want to get married. Ji Yeon seemed surprised by what was happening and said that they used to work with them in the company. Yunho replied that they certainly worked together in the same office. Ji Yeon agreed, saying that he was right, and that they had been in a relationship, but kept it a secret that no one knew about. After that, they received a notification that the arena was now ready, and that the mission would begin immediately. They then felt the ground start to shake, and they couldn't keep their balance. It wasn't just a feeling, it was real, and soon after, the ground tilted sharply downward. Yunho ordered Choi to hold onto the pillar and never let go, no matter what. Yunho then noticed that Ji Yeon was being pulled downward, where fire awaited below, and if she fell into it, she would definitely die. Yunho quickly ran towards her, calling her name and asking her to grab his hand quickly. When Ji Yeon took his hand, Yunho used the hardening skill to anchor himself to the ground, then asked her if she was okay. Yunho asked her to hold onto his hand tightly and not let go, no matter what, assuring her that he would hold on to her as much as he could. He then heard Choi's voice warning them about a table falling on them. Yunho thought to himself, saying that if he let go now, they would fall into the fire, and if they stayed as they were, the table would fall on them. Suddenly, a notification appeared that a new skill had been activated, and Yunho felt surprised and happy. The system informed him that all the struggles and hardships he had gone through had turned into a new feature, and this skill was acceleration. Yunho said that anything would be good as long as he could get out of this difficult situation. He used the skill quickly without thinking. He then noticed that time had slowed down significantly, and the people around him seemed like statues. The scene shifted to after Yunho saved Ji Yeon and made her sit on the ground. He asked her if she felt okay, or if she had any injuries, but Ji Yeon was still in shock, asking Yunho what he had done. She remembered that they were holding hands, clinging to the ground, and the table was about to fall on them. Suddenly, Yunho let go of her hand and disappeared in front of her, then reappeared behind her very quickly. Ji Yeon expressed her amazement, saying that the speed with which Yunho moved was not natural at all. She curiously asked how he managed to move so fast, and Yunho replied that he wasn't sure what had happened, that the skill had appeared suddenly, and he used it without thinking, and now he would open the properties window to see the details. Ji Yeon expressed her amazement, saying that he had actually gathered enough experience points to unlock a new skill. When Yunho opened the properties window, he confirmed that the new skill was speed enhancement, and at its first level, it made every 5 seconds that passed for others feel like 1 second to him, allowing him to see others 5 times slower. Yunho noticed that if he leveled up the skill, he might be able to see others even slower than 5 times, and he said in amazement that if he could make it 50 or 100 seconds, he would have an ability similar to stopping time. Ji Yeon interrupted his thoughts, saying that the ground had returned to normal and had stopped moving. Yunho said that the ground was still shaking slightly, and Ji Yeon agreed, saying she felt like they were standing on water or something unstable. Yunho said that after what she said, he started to feel that the ground was shaking in the opposite direction. Suddenly Choi appeared, running towards them happily because they were both okay. Yunho responded to Choi, expressing his happiness that Choi held onto the wall as he was asked. Ji Yeon said that she felt like she was going to die this time. Then they felt the ground begin to tilt again. Choi seemed puzzled by what was happening and asked Yunho why the ground was shaking again. Choi noticed a change in Yunho's expression, and Yunho thought to himself that he now understood why the system named this mission the arena. He compared the situation to a scale that tilts when the two sides are not equal. Yunho remembered Haruna's words when she was distributing the rewards and said she wanted to finish the matter quickly, then looked at the ground and said it was perfect and flat. He thought that Haruna and her company saw no value in the people here and that they were planning to get rid of them all. When the ground started shaking, people ran, searching for something to hold on to. Yunho called out to Choi, asking him to run quickly to rebalance the ground and stop when he felt it was balanced again. Then he addressed Ji Yeon, asking her to stay close to the wall. After restoring balance, Yunho said that the situation would have been very difficult since the balance was lost before the cooldown of the acceleration skill had ended, and he said it was a good thing that Choi noticed it quickly and acted to restore the balance. Choi called out to Yunho, telling him that the ground was balanced now and that they should stay still, but suddenly, he saw someone running beside him. Choi called out to him, warning him that sudden movement would cause the ground to shake again, but the boy didn't listen and continued running. Choi noticed that the ground started shaking again, but the boy looked very scared and said he couldn't stay still and wanted to get out of the place. When the boy approached the door, he noticed that the ground had lowered even more, and he was about to fall into the fire beneath. The boy started screaming hysterically, causing a problem for everyone. Choi felt tense, trying to find a quick solution because everyone would fall into the fire if the situation continued like this. Suddenly, Yunho appeared next to Choi and asked him to quickly head toward Ji Yeon, assuring him that he would handle the problem. The cooldown period for the acceleration skill ended, and Yunho used it to quickly move toward the boy who was about to fall into the fire. Everyone seemed surprised at Yunho's speed and how he got there so quickly. Then a person named Seong appeared, also flying in the sky, observing what was happening, and commented that there was an unexpected change in plans. The scene shifted to Haruna, who told Seong that she had warned him several times not to interrupt her while she was working. Seong replied nervously, saying that he came because the matter couldn't be delayed. He informed her that the mission in Area 107 was about to end, and that there were 13 survivors. Haruna seemed shocked, saying that this was impossible because the expected outcome for the mission in Area 107 was complete extermination. Seong mentioned that there was something unusual in Area 107, and Haruna responded, saying that there was indeed a clever person who dropped the screen in the safe zone to save as many people as possible. She smiled, saying that this person was very interesting, and she wanted to see him herself, asking Seong to send the Eye to monitor them. Seong replies that he will carry out the task immediately, but before he leaves, Haruna calls out to him and asks about the number of remaining monsters in Zone 10. He answers with his head lowered, saying that 10 monsters are still there, and none have been caught. Haruna responds with a sinister expression, telling him to send all 10 monsters to Yunho. Seong is shocked by her request, but she explains that she wants to see if Yunho is not only smart, but also physically capable. Meanwhile, Yunho manages to rescue a crying child who had been tightly shutting his eyes in fear. When the child senses that the danger has subsided, he opens his eyes and asks Yunho why he is there and what is happening. Yunho shouts to everyone, telling them that if they don't want to die, they must not even think about moving. Afterward, Yunho reflects internally that he hadn't wanted to reveal his skills to others, but since there were no other options to persuade them, he was forced to use the acceleration skill. He adds that if his predictions are correct, the ground will return to normal soon. Indeed, shortly after, the ground stabilizes, and a message reaches everyone, announcing that the first mission has been successfully completed and the arena's condition has been cleared. Hearing this, Yunho sits down to catch his breath after the intense tension he had faced. Choi rushes over to ask if he is all right, while Ji-yoon questions him about what he just did. Yunho responds by saying that at least they all managed to survive. However, someone else asks how he moved so quickly, as such speed is impossible for any human. Yunho becomes visibly tense, unsure whether to reveal that it's a skill he acquired or to remain silent. Suddenly, a sound comes from the ceiling, and everyone hears it but cannot determine its source. Without warning, a giant eye appears in the ceiling, followed by a message announcing that a new mission is about to begin. The mission requires them to defeat the blade-beaked bird. As soon as the bird appears, it attacks Choi, who is still in shock from everything happening. Yunho leaps in to save him at the last moment. He then yells at Choi, telling him to control himself because there is nowhere they can run. He adds that they are not facing just 1 or 2 birds, but 10 of them. Hearing Yunho's words, Ji-yoon calls out to him, asking what they can do. He replies that the best course of action, given that they lack weapons, is to dodge the attacks. Upon learning that Yunho might be able to act if he had a weapon, Ji-yoon remembers a girl named Yi-ji, who had received a sword from the gift box. Ji-yoon quickly approaches Yi-ji and asks her to give the sword to Yunho. Yi-ji questions what she would do if she handed over the sword. Ji-yoon replies that she had seen what Yunho did earlier, and believes he is the only one who can save them with the sword. Ji-yoon then calls on a security officer to hand over his shield as well. Once she has both the sword and the shield, she tosses them to Yunho. Yunho thanks Ji-yoon after receiving the shield and sword. Before using his acceleration skill, he upgrades it to level 2 to gain more usage time. He then begins battling the birds. Yunho tells himself that he now has enough time to get accustomed to using the shield and sword. Choi is amazed at what Yunho is doing and pleads with him not to provoke the birds. However, Yunho has a plan in mind, to gather all the birds together, and then use the acceleration skill to defeat them all at once. Yunho proceeds with his plan, using the level 2 acceleration skill, which allows him to see the monsters moving 10 times slower. He manages to kill the first bird, and then swiftly continues, eliminating them all in no time. Reaching the last bird, he leaps onto its back and stabs it with the sword, successfully defeating all 10 birds by himself. This happens while Seong and Haruna watch the scene in utter shock. Haruna opens Yunho's attribute window and discovers that all his stats are quite ordinary, with nothing remarkable. Seong remarks that the previous assessments were inadequate because what is happening now is incredibly strange. Before he can finish, Haruna interrupts him, visibly angry, demanding that he say something logical instead. She questions how someone with average stats in this area could possess such strength. Seong feels intense fear of Haruna and begins apologizing profusely for the mistake that occurred. Haruna, still angry, declares that she had already expected the investigation department's methods to be unreliable. As Seong stands frozen in place, he watches Yunho cautiously, trying to comprehend what just happened. He notes that Yunho's acceleration skill caused the monsters to gather in one spot as soon as the bait moved toward them, shifting the balance in Yunho's favor in an instant. Seong observes another detail as he focuses more closely, commenting that even with these skills, Yunho would have been at a disadvantage if he had faced the monsters one by one. However, What puzzles him most is how Yunho, who was just an ordinary person yesterday, transformed to such an advanced level so quickly. A crazy idea flashes through Seong's mind, and he tells Haruna that perhaps Yunho has reversed the timeline of his life, as if the past and present have swapped in a strange way. Haruna dismisses this idea, saying it makes no sense, as Yunho initially had no knowledge of how to use a sword and was swinging it around randomly. Seong becomes even more confused and asks Haruna why Yunho improved so drastically. She replies that his level increased with every move and swing of the sword. Smiling, she adds that this demonstrates Yunho's exceptional learning ability, calling it the most fascinating part of the situation. She points out that wielding a sword might simply be a tool for hunting animals for some, but for others, it could be a means to surpass limits and dominate the world. Haruna then gives a wicked smile, announcing her desire to witness all of Yunho's abilities. The scene shifts to Yunho, who successfully completed the mission by defeating all 10 birds on his own. The system begins analyzing the mission and calculating each participant's contribution. Yunho is shocked to receive an S-rank rating for this mission, earning 1 point for completion, 2 additional points for his high rating, and 1,000 welfare points. Upon learning about the extra points as a reward for his evaluation, Yunho remarks that he doesn't fully understand what happened, but he is now ready to start implementing the plan he has been contemplating all along. Later, Ji-yoon approaches Yunho, wiping the blood off his face and asking if he is okay. She tells him she had been calling out to him, but he didn't respond, and asks again if he is sure he is fine. Yunho smiles at her, assuring her that he is in good condition. He then asks Ji-yoon about the rating she received for the mission. She replies that she earned an A rank. Yunho then asks Choi about his rating, discovering that he received a B rank. Yunho realizes that the system categorizes people based on their mission ratings, likely determined by each person's contribution. He notices that Ji-yoon and he are in the top ranks, while Choi falls into the average category due to performing actions similar to most people. Choi comments that he still doesn't fully understand the system, but he performed better than expected, given that all he did was scream and hide behind Yunho. Choi seems deeply frustrated, and Yunho tries to think of something to cheer him up. An idea strikes Yunho, and he asks Choi to help him collect the bird carcasses. Choi, puzzled, asks why he needs them. Yunho explains that their beaks are extremely sharp and will be useful for crafting weapons. Choi appears unconvinced about using the beaks as weapons, but Yunho clarifies his intentions and asks if Choi can collect a few beaks. Yunho adds that Choi is stronger than him, so he expects him to handle this task with ease. Yunho then asks if Choi is willing to help, and Choi's expression shifts from frustration to elation as he declares that he is ready to do anything, even if it means collecting 100 beaks instead of just 10. Yunho smiles at him, saying that 3 beaks will be sufficient. Internally, Yunho feels that Choi's reaction is slightly over the top, but is pleased to see his mood improve. Yunho then approaches Ji-yoon and tells her that he needs something resembling a staff. He begins scanning the surroundings to find anything useful. Suddenly, a new notification from the system announces the opening of a low-level shop. Yunho is astonished to learn that an actual shop is available to them and immediately opens it to explore its contents. He discovers that the shop's design is identical to those found in games. All the participants open the shop to explore its items. One of the children expresses amazement, remarking that it feels like they are in a real game. Yunho begins browsing the shop's contents and finds everything he might need, from swords and shields to healing potions. However, he notices that the official currency used in the shop is welfare points. Yunho hears the child who was almost burned earlier exclaiming that he doesn't even understand what welfare points are. Yunho deduces from this that some people didn't earn any welfare points at all. As Yunho continues to browse the shop's items, he realizes that most of them are of low quality and won't last long. Ji-yoon agrees with him, noting that welfare points only allow them to buy low-grade items. However, Choi interjects, complaining that he can't even afford those basic items. Ji-yoon asks him how many points he earned from the mission, and he replies that he only got 200 points. Ji-yoon reveals that she received 500 points. Choi continues, saying that all he can afford with 200 points is a broken iron sword. Hearing this, Yunho smiles and declares that he's found exactly what he was looking for, insisting it's the most important thing they need right now. Choi and Ji-yoon move closer to Yunho, with Choi asking if he discovered something new. Yunho confirms and says he plans to purchase the broken sword Choi mentioned earlier. Ji-yoon pulls out her dagger and asks Yunho if he intends to use the broken sword as a throwable weapon due to its small size. Yunho replies that while the sword is similar in length to a dagger, it is much heavier, making it unsuitable for throwing. Ji-yoon then asks about his main idea. Yunho explains that the sword is very primitive, with a dull and broken blade, making it a low-quality weapon. However, he adds that what interests him is the handle. Choi is astonished by his explanation, and Yunho elaborates that the handle, the wrapped grip used to hold the blade, will be essential for crafting a new weapon. If they manage to create a new blade from the sharp-beaked bird's remains, the handle will protect his hands from injury. Yunho adds that he initially considered attaching the blade to a stick or something similar, but using the sword handle would be far more effective. As Yunho explains, Choi suddenly alerts him to something behind him. When Yunho turns around, he sees the child he saved earlier standing there. The child asks if Yunho is experienced in fighting, commenting that his way of using the sword while battling the monsters was highly impressive. The child continues excitedly, praising Yunho's skill and describing how the blood splattered during the fight, making it look amazing. Yunho feels embarrassed, realizing he hadn't noticed the child approaching him. Choi looks angry and wants to scold the child, but Yunho stops him and asks the child to clarify his point. The child expresses great admiration for Yunho, saying he finds him truly incredible. Yunho is surprised by the child's words,